And we're going to go all quiet now.
Yeah.
Every day I see miserable people doing things they hate just to fit in. I know it's easier to get along peacefully, but have you ever thought about you? Don't know why I keep on doing what I'm told to do when the rules are made up by someone we never knew. Baby, wipe your tears and hear me out. We don't need someone to feel alright. Let's do the streets on a Monday. Let's call your exes and tell them they can join us too. Why always put it on money when you can get rich by trying to see the outside?
You want to unmute yourself, Lenore, Attorney Lenore? Go ahead and unmute yourself. Oh, I know why you can't. I know why you can't. Hold on, Attorney Lenore. I'm going to do it for you. So hold tight. Technology is so much fun. All right, hold tight. All right, now try it.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Thank you. Well, yep. Technology is great if it works. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Dear Attorney Lenore Show. I'm excited to have you here tonight. The worst part of divorce sometimes can be not only ending up with a hole in your pocket, but also a hole in your heart, and it going down the rabbit hole of the War of the Roses. It's my passion and my commitment to help people avoid these pitfalls, because the process of divorce emotionally is tough enough as it is, and pouring salt into the wounds, both financially and emotionally, is just the worst thing that anyone can do in this process. And my vocation is to try and help people see this in a different light and take a different path. So that is what we are going to delve into tonight, is how to avoid a hole in your heart as well as a hole in your pocket. And I'm excited. We have some great questions that were sent in to us, and we have some great participants. And as always, I am so lucky to have my producer, Pamela Elaine Nichols, with me. She is just a talented author, speaker, fantastic coach, and I'm just lucky to have her on my team. Thank you, Elaine, for being with me.
You're so welcome, Attorney Lenore. And for everyone who's watching, I have been through divorce. So if that's something you're facing, then you should know that you're not alone, because I've been through the experience myself. And I'm happy to bring that perspective to this show today. And if you are joining us for the first time, if you are joining us for the first time, You are welcome. You are welcome, welcome, welcome to place your questions in the chat. All you have to do is start it with Dear Attorney Lenore, then ask your question. If I see your question in the chat, I will read it to Attorney Lenore and she will answer it live. You can ask as many questions as you want. There's no limit until the show ends. And until I do see your question in the chat, I will go ahead and kick off with some of the questions that were submitted previously, as Attorney Lenore just shared. Attorney Lenore, are you ready to get to the first question that was submitted?
I am.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Okay. The hole is getting bigger. Dear Attorney Lenore, I'm writing to you with a heavy heart. My best friend told me that he wants to divorce his wife of 19 years. I am deeply concerned about the stress this decision is taking on him. He cries a lot these days, and I have seen my best friend cry only once. Divorce is inevitable. I know this, and so does he. How can I best support him to avoid his heart bursting wide open? Sincerely, concerned BFF. Love that.
Oh, well, it is so hard to stand by and see somebody you care about going through this painful process. First and foremost, just be there and hold space and listen. Next, I think it's helpful to have your friend get some professional support to help them process that this whole situation. If they are definitely sure that it is divorce that they want, then individual counseling is probably the best way to go. If they're not sure, there's discernment counseling, which is a really fascinating approach to helping couples decide whether or not they really do want a divorce, if this is the only path forward. And there are many discernment counselors in the area, and it's a great tool for people to use when you Google that. The other thing is, on a more practical point, your friend should be getting together their documentation, looking at what the finances are, trying to think forward what might happen with the assets and debts. Perhaps talk to a certified divorce financial analyst to help them digest everything and have an idea what their future is going to look like when they split the assets. And then the other things would be to find out what your rights are. If you want to consult with an attorney, you can do that. But the process of going through the divorce, especially if your best friend and his spouse are relatively civil with one another, would be mediation. You definitely should encourage your friend to look into the mediation process, to contact a mediator, to have a consultation with him and his wife about the mediation process, because that is one of the best avenues for people to avoid it being a nasty process, emotionally painful process, and a very expensive process. Mediation is a much more economical way for parties to separate their households and move forward as unmarried.
So, Attorney Lenore, let's pick apart some of those terms you use for those who are not quite familiar with it. So, discernment counseling is what you brought up, which is, if you want to just explain a little bit about what that is, so those listening and those watching in the future know what it is.
So, discernment counseling is a process whereby the parties meet with a counselor who is trained in this process. And it's a unique approach in that, it's one spouse is usually in, they want to stay married and the other spouse doesn't. And so they sit down with this counselor and talk about that decision. and decide whether or not they want another session with the counselor to decide what is it that brought them to this decision, to this place in their marriage, and whether or not they want to undergo counseling to try and resolve some of those hurts, or if they just want to get divorced and move forward. And it's a process that each session that this question is posed to the couple, and the sessions, there's no more than 5 sessions that a party goes through, because it's either they're going to decide to get divorced or they're going to decide to have counseling to repair their marriage. And the beauty of that is to help people sort of pull apart what the motivation is and to really decide if this is what's going to make things better for them. And it's a relatively new form of counseling, and it was developed specifically to help address this question of when one spouse has one foot in and the other spouse has one foot out in a marriage.
Yeah, so it really is an opportunity to get clear.
Yes.
If you want to stay, or if you want to go, and even why you want to stay and why you want to go. And I like that that's the initial step. And then if you decide you want to stay, both decide they want to stay, then they can move on to counseling on how to make that happen. And if both decide we want out, then they come and see you to know how to get out peacefully, respectfully, without putting a bigger hole in their heart and a bigger hole in their pocket.
Exactly.
Okay.
And, all these emotions are where they need to diffuse the emotions before they move forward.
Yes. Then you also mentioned the term, just in case, assets and liabilities. Those are really two big fun and not fun terms. Can you just briefly describe what when you say assets, what does that mean? And when you say liabilities, what does that mean?
So assets are what you own and liabilities are what you owe. That's pretty broad brush.
Yes. And in the assets, what you own, and the liabilities, what you owe, those things have to be worked out in a divorce situation, and could be the most volatile of all. It really is the part of the hole in your pocket, right? If that's not handled properly, you have a big fat hole in your pocket, right?
Well, you could have a big fat hole in your pocket, not in that you are litigating, and instead of dividing the assets, you're paying lawyers. And the other thing is, money makes people funny. It definitely is an emotionally charged subject. And that's where the hole in your heart comes in.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. So if you're just now joining us, first of all, welcome. Thank you for being here, whether you're here for yourself or someone you care about. You are tuning into the Dear Attorney Lenore show, where we take questions. Well, Attorney Lenore takes the questions live. I'm the one that gets to ask the questions. If you have a question on this topic, a hole in your pocket, hole in your heart, avoiding the high cost of divorce. And we say high cost, we're not just talking about financial, we're talking about emotional, spiritual, social, and otherwise. All you have to do is put your question in the chat, kick it off with Dear Attorney Lenore, then ask your questions. When I see it come up, I'll ask the question of I'll read your question to Attorney Lenore. Until that time, I'll keep asking Attorney Lenore the questions that were sent in advance. Shall we go to the next question, Attorney Lenore?
I think we shall.
I think we shall. Okay. We own a lot. Dear Attorney Lenore, my husband announced that he wants a divorce. I'm fine with that because the marriage hasn't been great for years. What I'm not fine with is how expensive this divorce is going to be. We own a lot and I want to keep most of it for myself. Guess what? He wants to keep most for himself too. See the problem? How do I avoid how expensive this divorce will be? Sincerely, I want more. At least
Yeah.
she's honest. She's honest, Attorney Lenore.
Well, yes, yes. I think sometimes couples feel like the money is going to be the salvo or salve for the pain. But it's not. It actually is salt in those wounds in the long run. The worst thing they can do is litigate. The very worst thing they can do is litigate. If they have a lot of money and they go into court, they are going to be in a fight or flight mentality because they're in an adversarial system where they're afraid of losing and they want to win. And that immediately shuts off your executive functioning. On top of that, they're handing over the responsibility for dividing their assets to third parties who really, they're not financial analysts, they're judges and lawyers, and they have general ideas about what the law might say in terms of how to divide the assets, but that might not be the most financially sound way to divide your assets, especially when you have a big marital pot to divide. So I would suggest that these parties, first and foremost, go to a mediator, meet with a mediator, find out what that process is, see if they're capable, with the assistance of perhaps a certified divorce financial analyst, to sit down themselves and decide what makes sense in terms of the division of the assets and their debts. And if not, then they can look into what's called collaborative law, which is representation without litigation. And in that situation, they will each be represented by an attorney who will advise them legally. But the goal of those two attorneys is to help guide the parties to a financial settlement that's going to be in everyone's best interest in the family. And they do that by the use of getting, again, a certified divorce financial analyst involved to look at the assets and debts, and then to present scenarios of what it will look like to divide the assets a certain way, in it, what it will look like in a year, 5 years, 20 years. It will give them some food for thought. It will help guide them to what is going to be the best way to divide their assets to avoid tax consequences, capital gains, to make decisions as to what apples are, comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges when they're dividing the assets. All of those things will be very important tools for them to use, for them to make informed, clear, calm decisions about what their future should look like, as opposed to putting third parties in charge who really are not, they're putting square pegs in round holes, and you're not necessarily going to come up with the best resolution if you lawyer up and litigate, and you're going to spend an exorbitant amount of money on lawyers.
Yeah. So before we go on to the next question, I for the sake of those watching now and in the future, we just want to clear up those terms. So we've talked about, you've brought up the word litigation, you've brought up the word mediation, and in here, collaboration. And so just so we can make sure we're distinguishing all three of those things, because it can get very confusing. When you say litigation, what I hear you saying is, I get my lawyer, my spouse gets his lawyer, and we battle it out and a judge decides.
Exactly.
When I hear you say collaboration, I hear I get a lawyer, my spouse gets a lawyer, but we don't battle it out in court. We make an agreement to try to settle it without a judge involved. Do I have that part right?
Yes.
And then mediation is, there's one person who's helping to facilitate a conversation between me and my spouse on what we want, how we want this divorce to go out, how we want to settle our assets and our liabilities, things of that nature, our children and so forth. But the point is, we get to drive the car where we together, my spouse and I, decide we want to go, with the support of someone like you, an attorney mediator, who can both be the mediator and then the attorney at the same time.
Exactly. Exactly.
What I also hear
Exactly.
you saying is that litigation, tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in some people's cases. Collaboration, not so expensive, but mediation being the most economical choice of all if couples can do it. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Okay, that's really an important distinction because it can get so fuzzy. The other thing I heard you say that I think is so important for everyone to capture is you brought up Certified Divorce Financial Analyst, CDFA. And these are the individuals that can help you figure out what you owe, what you own, and some kind of financial profiling around that so you know what might happen to you and your money post divorce. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Okay, so this is really good stuff and an important distinction. And what you're sharing are ways to reduce the hole, because there's going to be a hole in the pocket and a hole in the heart in some way, right? Some
Sure.
way it's going
Sure.
to be hard.
Yeah, you're cutting the loaf of bread in half. And that's it's going to hurt a little
It's
bit.
gonna hurt.
But
Yeah.
you know, if you do this without getting the courts involved, that loaf of bread's only getting divided for the most part between you and your spouse. If you go the way of litigation, a big chunk of that loaf's going to the lawyers.
Yeah, I know what that feels like. Now, in this particular person's case, the I want more wife, this is kind of tricky because she says she wants to keep most of it for herself, and the husband wants to keep most of what they own, obviously, for himself. Litigate, collaborative, mediate. What do you say?
So I would say just if they're just going forward based on that, collaborative law. I think that in order to help them make that decision the best way possible, maybe have a consultation with an attorney who can tell them, all right, this is possibly what the courts might do. These are the pitfalls you might be looking at. These are the things that are realistic for you to expect. And with that information, perhaps deciding, do I need an attorney to help me navigate this to a resolution in the collaborative process? Or if there's somebody to facilitate this conversation between my spouse and I, and we've both talked to attorneys, maybe we really are saying the same thing, just in a different way. But you have to lose the my way or the highway attitude for mediation to be successful. And in some respects, for collaborative law to be successful. Litigation is just venting your spleen. I'd rather nobody have it than him have it, might be her attitude, but it's a foolish attitude. Because in the long run, she'll just be hurting herself.
Yeah. So if you are just now joining us, you might be used to joining Zoom where you're just a listener. But in this show, you get to be a participant and you can ask your question by putting it in the chat. And once I see it, I will read it to Attorney Lenore and she will answer it. No question is too small. And there are no such things as stupid questions either. And you can ask as many questions as you want. I want you to know that ask your questions, because Attorney Lenore is here to educate and inform so that people who have to go through divorce can do it a lot more amicably and peacefully and not end up with a hole in your pocket and a hole in your heart inevitably. Shall we go to the next question, Attorney Lenore?
Please do.
Yeah, let's see what's going on with the next question here. All right, hold tight. My parents are getting a divorce. Dear Attorney Lenore, my parents are getting a divorce. As a teenager, Their news has flattened my heart and devastated my sense of security. I want my parents to stay together, but I know they won't. What can a teenager say to his parents to avoid them from ripping our family's heart into tiny pieces? Sincerely, I'm too young to be in the middle. Attorney Lenore, I love this question because a teenager, a young person, can see the devastation that's on its way and wants to help, you know, lessen that blow to the family. What a responsible question.
Really. And poor baby. I mean,
Mm,
you know,
yeah.
kids really do feel like they're the center of the universe in a lot of respects. Because they kind of have to do that developmentally to survive. It sounds like perhaps this child, teenager, might be a little parentified here. He
Mm,
or she might have been, the made to be the referee, or the peacemaker in some respects, during the tumultuous family upbringing that they've gone through, and now possibly feeling a sense of failure.
mm,
Um, Here's the thing. First of all, as far as the teen is concerned, they should sit their parents down in the same room and let their parents know this is really devastating for me. I love you both. You have to understand you are imploding my universe, and this is not my decision. So this is very unnerving. Um, and I'm going to be doing all the work here. You guys are going to
mm.
make your choices. You're going to get your separate houses, and you're going to be fat and happy in your house. But I'm the one who's going to be going back and forth.
Yeah,
And I need to know
yeah.
that my needs are going to be met, that my voice is going to be heard, and that this isn't going to be just about what you each want. Um, this is a major impact on me more than anything else. And my life will never be the same. And this is going to have a big impact on me. And then I think that this teen should really get some counseling to have some support. And I think the family as a whole would benefit from family counseling so that they can rework their family dynamic. So even though they're living in separate households, they're not using the same tools that failed them in their marriage to co-parent, because they'll fail at co-parenting. They should learn how to work together in a better way, to become a healthier family emotionally. And they're, because everybody's stuck together for the rest of their lives. This
Yeah,
doesn't end when this child's 18. There's
yeah.
holidays and weddings and births of children, and and, and it's going to impact this child emotionally for the rest of their lives, and they really need to understand that, and they need to do better.
Attorney Lenore, there is this documentary. The name of it escapes me, but it is about the voice of the children. Someone did a documentary and interviewed children about the impact of their parents' divorce on their lives, and it was so moving. Do you remember what the name of that documentary is?
There were a couple
Oh,
different ones. There was one
mhm.
called Split.
That's it. That's the one I'm talking about.
That was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And that's younger kids, but also I believe the American Bar Association also did a video about children
Mhm.
going through custody battles. That
Yeah.
was very moving. But there's a number of things. But yes, I mean, that these videos, you're hearing from the kids themselves
Mhm.
what they're going through.
Mhm.
And I have to tell the audience, I have 40 and 50-year-old attorneys whose parents had an awful divorce, and they're still affected. And
Yeah.
holidays are still awful. So
Yeah.
is that the legacy that these people want to give? Hopefully not.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that this teen is asking this question, I think the parents should remember out of the mouths of babes, oftentimes come
Mm.
gems, and
Hmm.
they have to understand that their decisions are dramatically affecting their teen,
Yeah.
and all the money in the world isn't worth hurting your kids.
Yeah. And, to that, I would say to those who I can hear the question that isn't being asked, but I'm going to articulate it. Yes, but Attorney Lenore, I cannot live with this woman anymore. It really is over. And if I don't get out of this marriage, it's either I'm going to die or somebody else is going to die because I can't live like this. And I think what I hear you saying is if this has to be the case, then do it in a way that doesn't create a hole in your pocket and a hole in the heart, yours and that of your children. Because there's a way to do it where you're not ripping everybody apart. And there's a way to do it where you do rip everybody apart. You get to choose, but hopefully you'll choose wisely once you're better informed about the options and how this is going to affect your children.
Most definitely. And I think that um because I see it every day, if you step into the um ring with judges and lawyers, it just becomes a battle, and where you're shooting volleys at each other, but really they're going through your kids and making them emotional Swiss cheese.
Mm,
And um y- you know they each parent feels like, well, I'm just protecting them from the other parent. But I think what they lose sight of is this child is half of each of your DNA.
mhm,
And if
mhm.
you're bad mouthing the other parent, then they're going to feel bad about themselves. You're not doing them any favors by disparaging the other parent,
Yeah. Mhm.
because that's just going to negatively impact their sense of self.
Yes, for sure. And the wake up call for me when I had to learn to shut my mouth around saying something about my kid's father that wasn't positive is I'm thinking I'm the holier one and he's the devil. But it turns out that they saw both of us as the devil. They lumped mom and dad in the same category of hating one another when I was really trying my best to be the one above board. Nope, they saw me just as unkind and controversial as their father, and that's when I thought to myself, we got to we got to change something here.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want everyone to know that what you say about your spouse, yes, does hurt the children very deeply. And if you think by doing that you win points, you actually lose points.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right, let's go
Absolutely.
with that confession. Let's go to the next question.
When you know better,
Oh,
you do better, Pam.
right. Okay, the next question is running out of money and time. Dear Attorney Lenore, I have already spent $12,000 in legal fees to divorce my husband. My money is running out and I'm running scared. My soon to be husband hasn't spent anything. My soon to be husband, I think she meant my soon to be ex husband.
Ex-husband, yes.
Yeah, hasn't spent anything close to what I have spent, nor does he seem bothered by the process. I don't know what to do and I'm still not divorced. Can you help? Sincerely, 12K deep. Hmm.
Yes. It's never too late to mediate.
Oh, I like that's tweetable. Never too late to mediate. Okay. Yeah.
Yes. Sometimes parties have to vent their spleen until they're at a point where, okay, I'm ready now to sit down and talk settlement.
Hmm.
So, that is definitely one way that this person can approach it. They can say, hey, you know, if we go to court, it's going to cost money. And, you know, if you don't have an attorney and you think you're going to go into court and win, I guess you're kind of kidding yourself. But we can do this differently. We can go into mediation. We can certainly at least get a consultation to see what mediation is. If we don't think that that's going to suit us because we still think we want lawyers, but we're closer to settlement, we can look into the collaborative process as well. You know, it's certainly cheaper than litigation. Those attorneys' fees add up really quick. And I bet you she is nowhere near close to getting to court anyway.
Oh, why do you say that? Why do you say that, Attorney Lenore?
Well, most attorneys these days charge about $5,000 in attorney's fees, and hourly rates are anywhere from $350 to $550, and then they bill for every phone call, every email, every time a paralegal touches a piece of paper. It really adds up really, really quickly. And, you know, $5,000 is gone before you know it. And then,
so when you say $5,000, you mean that's not the full amount. That's just to retain the lawyer, right? I'm going to give you $5,000 of my money up front, and you pull from that to every time the paralegal touches a piece of paper, every phone call, but then that $5,000 becomes zero, and I need to replenish with another 5,000 or 7,000 or 10,000. Then okay, yeah, I want to make sure that's clear.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so this
5,000 is just initially.
Yeah. So that this person is, you know, probably, you know, into the initial stages of litigating discovery or making motions of, you know, who keeps what or who, you know, support. They haven't even gotten started.
I see.
Now, mediation, the average cost for a full mediation program is anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000. And if you use a mediator who is also an attorney, that would include processing your final divorce and a marital settlement agreement.
So wait, now this is important, because what that says is you can have a mediator who's not an attorney who can help facilitate the discussion and help the couple decide what they want to do. But then that couple's going to have to go get an attorney ultimately to do the legal paperwork. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
But if we do an attorney mediator like you, it's a one-stop shopping.
Exactly.
And it's not, I give you $12,000, you pull from it, and then more money until this thing is done. It's basically a flat fee. Whatever that fee is, it's a flat fee.
Exactly. There's no hidden costs. You'll know everything up front. Collaborative law, again, it's not a flat fee, but it's a predictable cost, and you will understand what's going on, and you're not wasting time sitting in court for waiting for a judge or a hearing date. You're not your attorney's not spending a lot of time and money drafting paperwork to fight one side against the other. All of that money is focused on coming up with a settlement that's going to work best for both of you. So your money is working for you in the collaborative process as well as the mediation process. It's not work in some respects. It could almost be working against you in being in court and fighting it out.
Oh, absolutely. Because, you know, I remember going to court on a particular matter. Excuse me, he had his attorney sitting, waiting for the judge. I had my attorney sitting, waiting for the judge. And we were sitting for a couple of hours. And before we got to see the judge, And that couple of hours sitting, waiting for the judge cost me hundreds of dollars just to sit and wait. And then finally, when the judge comes, that costs more because now they had to talk to the judge about what that matter was. It was ridiculously expensive.
You
And I think
probably
that's,
spent a couple $1,000s that day.
oh yeah, oh for sure. I sometimes I wonder, do I ever want to go back and look at those bills? Because all that stuff is in a box now. I'm trying to decide between burning the box or framing a few things to help remind myself that I need to help other people not go through what I went through. I'm not sure what I'm going to do there,
I don't know.
Attorney
I know
Lenore,
a
but
lot of people burn the stuff.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there might be some pieces that you might think are important to inspire other people.
I think so.
Um,
Yeah. So we have a question in the chat now. So I'm going to read that. A very brave person is willing to ask their question. Dear
Very
Attorney
good.
Lenore, what do you do when your attorney hasn't come up with a strategy and is trying to convince you to sign the soon-to-be ex-husband's counter settlement? Sincerely frustrated and deep in retainers. Wow, what a great question, and how they set up the question and also named themselves frustrated and deep in retainers. That's great. So, Attorney Lenore, what do you say?
Wow. Well, you may think your attorney isn't coming up with a strategy because they're not trying to get you what you want. They may be saying that what's being offered is fair, and that to litigate it might not be worth it. Now, the other thing is, if you're not comfortable with this attorney's advice, you're kind of losing faith in the attorney, which is understandable. Give yourself some peace of mind and consult with somebody else. Spend a couple $100 and meet with another attorney to see what their perspective is on the settlement. It never hurts to get a couple opinions. Just because your attorney's telling you this, if you don't feel comfortable with it, run it by another attorney and see what they have to say.
Okay, so I'm gonna speak for this person if they could speak for themselves. And I'm red flags are rolling up in my head. It's like, oh my gosh, Attorney Lenore, I can't afford another piece of advice from anybody because I'm already deep in retainers. So should I, Attorney Lenore, ask my current attorney to just pause for a moment? Don't spend another darn dime until I can seek a second opinion from another attorney, because I only have so much money, and right now it's in my current attorney's pocket. How do I even manage to get another opinion when I already don't have enough money?
Well, to get another opinion, it probably would just be a few $100s, but yes, you can certainly tell, and I guess I shouldn't have assumed this, but if the attorney's saying, listen, let's accept this offer, you can say, no, I need some time to think about it. Just put the brakes on everything. Give me a minute to breathe here. And the attorney will, a decent attorney will listen to you. And it's not surprising you're feeling that way because you're in this fight or flight state right now. It's a win or lose situation. Your executive functioning is somewhat turned off. And so you're feeling threatened, and that's why you don't want to sign it. And that's understandable. And I think the best thing for you to do is take a breath and then get a second opinion. I mean, sometimes I say to people, divorce is like a very serious medical decision. If you're faced with a dire diagnosis, Do you want the doctors in the operating room fighting over who should get the scalpel?
Yeah.
Or do you want to calmly get different opinions, look at different options, digest them, and then figure out what steps you want to make go forward? And that
Yeah.
is often how I've described that to people who are coming to me for mediation. This is like you've gotten a serious medical diagnosis. And this gives you the opportunity to decide the best path forward to give you the best chance of healing.
Mm.
You know, you're not going to be whole, but like this is a way to cause less damage.
I heard something in your answer that I don't know that I've ever heard before, which is, listen, everyone, you have permission to go and get a second opinion, even a third if that's necessary. Because I think what we've been taught through society and, family and friends, once you get a lawyer, that whatever that lawyer says is what you should accept or go for. And there's no reason to ever go get another one unless that particular lawyer is just a mess. But you can retain the relationship you have with your current lawyer and get another opinion. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with that. Doesn't mean your attorney is inadequate or insufficient. It just means you need that other perspective because this is such a serious decision. And I think I like your point that even if that costs you a few extra $100, that's nothing compared to making a decision that's going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars. Yeah.
Exactly.
I hope
and I just want to say, like, you might have been at a different point when you hired this attorney than you might be now. And so you may hear things differently, or you may decide that another attorney who is more in sync with where you are at this point might be a better person to work with you.
Yeah, I can understand how difficult that is, and I see why they put frustrated, because it does sound like it can be extremely frustrating to have to deal with this. And the truth be told, this counter offer might be the best offer ever. And they need to be able to know that that's the case. It's just because it's a counter doesn't mean it's bad. Counter settlement doesn't mean it's bad. But again, for that person to probably get another opinion. I hope that's helpful. And if there's a follow-up question to that initial question, please go ahead and put it in the chat.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm going to go on to, I think, our last question on the board. He is suffering. No, I'm sorry. Her work is suffering. Oh, okay. Dear Attorney Lenore, I am the owner of a successful business. One of my best employees has not been performing at her standard for a few months. When I inquired, she admitted that she and her partner are divorcing. This decision will likely be costly for her financially and costly for me because she will be distracted for months. How can I help my employee and myself? What do I say to her? Sincerely, the well-intentioned boss. Good for the boss to recognize his employer, her employer, I'm not sure, is suffering and needs some support. I love the two questions because the community is stepping in, wanting to help those they care about. What say you, Attorney Lenore?
Well, I say that, what a great boss you are, for asking. And I would tell her that you empathize with her. This is a big decision. There's a lot that's at stake here, and that she should get as much support and information as possible before she decides what she wants to do. Be that counseling, be that consultations with attorneys, be that consultations with mediators or collaborative lawyers, or with financial analysts. I think the best thing that this business owner should say is, knowledge is power.
Mhm.
Get as much information as possible before you move forward, and try and do it as amicably as possible, because it's painful enough as it is, and to do it in an aggressive way is just as hurtful to you as it is to your spouse.
Mhm.
So that is it is not always the best way to go after your ex with a vengeance. There's a price to pay for that. um and just let them know, that you're there for them to listen,
Mhm.
and they should, certainly have therapeutic support as well.
Mhm.
And um that would probably be the best thing that a boss could say.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And for those who are listening and now and in the future, if there is a topic that you want Attorney Lenore to explore, let us know. You can either put it in the chat now, or you can email us and we'll give that information to you shortly. Tell us what you want her to talk about, and we'll create a show around that topic. I really do appreciate this, boss, as well, Attorney Lenore, because really there are a lot of people suffering in the workplace because they're experiencing divorce. There's a lot of stress around that, and it really reduces productivity. And
Course.
maybe if we're a little bit more attentive and empathetic, as you said, or empathic about the struggles that our employees are going through, that could really help minimize the hole in the heart, right? And the hole in the pocket as well. So kudos, I would say, also to the employer who cares about this um, employee. Okay, we have something in the chat here. Okay, we've got another bold soul who's willing to ask a question. So let me stop here. And here's the question. Dear Attorney Lenore, spouses are separating. One spouse wants the marriage, the other spouse does not want the marriage. Both spouses are still in the marital home. One minor child. What's the best point and avenue to seek when neither spouse is really tied to the marital home, but one spouse is more financially able to leave and get another home while the other spouse stays in the marital home? How does the leaving spouse get his or her distribution? What if the home is mortgaged in the leaving spouse's name? Should the spouses get something in writing before either spouse moves from the marital home? This is someone who's looking way ahead.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay.
So there's a couple things. One spouse wants the marriage, the other one doesn't. Discernment counseling. This is a
Mm-hmm.
great opportunity for discernment counseling, just to get things off on a peaceful footing. It's helpful to just get some clarity and to have a conversation in a therapeutic setting about the end of the marriage and why.
Mm-hmm.
And that, you may not you may not end up repairing the marriage, but you'll have a clearer maybe understanding why, and diffuse those questions and that anger and the confusion that the other spouse who doesn't want the marriage to end to come to. In
Yeah.
terms of the marital home, it sounds like this couple is somewhat peaceable.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
in my estimation, I think the best thing to do is to get a consultation with a mediator, to see if they're suited for mediation. And then in the mediation process, they can come up with a plan as to who stays, who goes, how that house gets refinanced, what happens with the other assets, what the parenting plan is going to be, whether or not there's going to be money that needs to be shared between the households so that the child feels secure going between both parents' households, that their needs are being met. Mediation is the place to go first.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it can be mediation is a very quick process. Generally the mediation of the marital settlement, that gets completed 3 to 6 months at the most.
Mm.
And then you finalize the paperwork and then the divorce, and each state has different waiting periods for the divorce. But the mediation process and the preparation of the marital settlement agreement after the mediated terms are agreed upon, 3 to 6 months, which is pretty quick.
Mhm.
And it is definitely a better way to move forward in divorce.
And this individual asked the question, and we'll wrap this up because I see the time. But this individual also says, what if the home is mortgaged in the leaving spouse's name? And I would offer, and you correct me on this, Attorney Lenore, that one thing that's important to know is whose name is on the title of the house. Yes, the mortgage is important, but whose names are on the title of the house, because that speaks to ownership, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
And so you have to know how the house is deeded,
Yeah.
and not only that, but also the mortgage. And if the spouse that's leaving is not the mortgage holder, or is the mortgage holder, then the
Mhm.
spouse that's staying, they can refinance.
Mhm.
They can buy out the other person or buy out the other person's interest,
Yeah.
either by refinancing and taking some of the equity out of the home,
Mhm.
offsetting with other assets. That's a whole discussion that can easily take place in the mediation process for the parties to come up with that kind of a resolution. And generally, when parties come to me for mediation, I say, try and keep things status quo until we
Mm.
come to a settlement, because that's going to be easier to figure out where the pieces fit best, as opposed to trying to, come resolve a moving target.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not essential, but the mediation process is so quick that it's feasible to wait until the mediation is over before
Yeah.
somebody moves out of the house.
Yeah, that's a good point, because once someone moves out of the house, that's when the clock starts ticking. Isn't that right? I mean, that's really in Pennsylvania, at least.
Well,
That's sort of,
you can be separated and living in the same household,
yeah,
for
yeah,
the
yeah. And it
separation
gets a,
period.
yeah,
It
yeah, it
gets
gets a little
complicated,
nuanced.
but in
Yes.
mediation, that's really not the issue. In
Yeah, yeah,
mediation,
yeah.
but again, when somebody moves out of the house, they lose a certain amount of control over the process and getting their equity out of the house.
Yeah. Hmm.
And and then there's a child involved. It would seem to make
Yeah.
more sense to come up with that kind of to get everything in place before somebody moves.
Yeah, yeah. Again, that's why mediation would be a great place to start with this process. Even if it doesn't ultimately end there, you still will be saving a lot. We were speaking relative to the state of Pennsylvania. This individual is, I assume, in North Carolina, because they're making yes, you can be separated in North Carolina without being separate. So that's a very state specific question, right,
Yes.
Attorney Lenore, that needs to be looked into. Yeah. All right. I see the time. I want to offer to everyone who's watching. First of all, thank you so much for your questions. I'm going to put into the chat Attorney Lenore's Gmail address that you can reach out to her, and her website, so that you can check her out there. Please click on those two and take a look. But in the meantime, Attorney Lenore, let them know that there's a great offer on the table, especially to the one of the individuals watching, if they wanted who asked a question about that you offered a second opinion.
Sure.
You want to tell them a little bit about this, Attorney Lenore, your offer?
Yes. So, normally my consultation for a 60-minute consultation, normally my fee is $350. But for those that attend the show and contact me at my Divorce Done Differently PA Gmail account, would get a discount to $100. And if it's someone from Pennsylvania, I can certainly advise them what the law in Pennsylvania is, as well as mediation and collaborative law strategies. If you're in another state, I can just discuss with you some practical strategies. I wouldn't be able to discuss what the legalities of are in your state because I'm not licensed to practice there, but I certainly can give you some coaching on how best to approach things.
Yes, nice, very nice. All right, and with that, we're going to say goodbye. Thank you all for joining us today and staying around, and we hope to see you next time on the show.
Thanks, everybody, for being here. Okay.